Hey y'all, Sophie Line here, welcome back to my channel. I'm returning with JB from our Bradley video. We are at the National Armor and Cavalry Collection here at Fort Benning, Georgia, with another combat vehicle that he has served on. This is the Caiman, and I'm going to turn the camera over to him, and he's going to share with you a little bit about what he knows and what he experienced with it. Come on.
Hey everybody, it's JB again, back by no particular demand. Today we're going to go through the MRAP, the Caiman. I served on these from 2008 to 2009 in Iraq. We spent time in mainly the middle of the country, and then we went down south to Basra, right on the Iranian border in these. We're going to go through, I'm just going to kind of talk about some of the features to it. This is one of the earlier models, so it doesn't have quite all the same protection packages and stuff that we had, but it'll give you a good idea of the kind of stuff that the Army paid into after they figured out that some of our mainline vehicles didn't really like getting blown up by mines and things like that. So I'll take you through, point out some of the stuff I know, tell you some of the things that I've done in them, and then we'll move on from there. We have the Caiman. It's based on a MMTV chassis, so basically your six-wheeled LMTVs, for those of you that know. It is a mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicle, so it doesn't really like taking a blast, but it's designed to take a blast better. It's got the engine up front, obviously, and you've got several different entrance points. There's a gunner's hatch up top, which we'll look at a little bit later. The commander sits on the right side, driver sits on the left side. In this one, all the doors are manual. In the version I was in Iraq, we actually had electric doors. They had a little switch on them, and you had more paneling on the side. So the doors were close to 1,000 pounds a piece, and they had a big hydraulic ram that would open them up. So you had to kind of sit there and open the doors up and wait, and it took a long time to get in and out of, but these things made you feel a little bit safer. However, they were kind of top heavy, and you had to watch them when you're driving around canals and things like that. So I'm going to take you through them a little bit, and we'll walk around, look at all the different stuff, and then we'll go inside where it's not so windy. All right, so up front, obviously we have our hood. Underneath here is our engine. You have several different antenna points. These up here are for your jamming equipment. All right, there's several different generations of jamming equipment that actually stop people from being able to remotely detonate things. They jam signals and things like that. So that's where your antennas would be up here. One of the bad things about that is some of them would stick up high enough that if the gunner was shooting from the front, he might actually take the top of one of your antennas off. And then you'd wonder why your radios weren't working that good or things like that. So that was kind of embarrassing if that would happen. Also on the front of the vehicle, sometimes you would have a, I can't really remember what we called them, honestly, but it was a bar that would sit up on front, and it would have a little heat source out in front of it. And you'd lay that down, and it was supposed to blow up things like that had IR detection capabilities. So anything that would detect a heat source and then blow up, that was supposed to blow it up prematurely. Like they're called explosively formed penetrators, like shape charge warheads that they would put into a wall. So when you drive by, it would shoot a jet of molten metal into the vehicle and hurt people. So that was meant to blow them up early and set them off a little bit early. Coming around on the side, we have basically the rest of your vehicle suspension and components, all that. You can kind of start to see the little V-shaped hull. You'll hear about MRAPs always having their V-shaped hull. This was designed so if anything blew up underneath the vehicle, the blast would get directed up and out. So the people inside, while they would get rocked, they wouldn't die. And when we get inside, we'll show you the seats that would actually absorb that blast. But this is designed to send it all out. All of this stuff in a blast would be gone. So your gas tank, everything, you're not driving away from it. But hopefully you wouldn't die. And you have your commander's door right here. This is the vehicle commander's position. Here you can lock it from the outside. So if you have it parked, you have it locked on the outside, your little handle. If you had the electric doors with the added protection on it, there'd be a little switch right back here that you had to hold until the door opened up, and it would open up with a hydraulic ram. Then coming back, we have little spotlights and stuff. Many different units put light packages all over the place. And during the whole height of the war on terror, units had their own discretionary money to buy whatever they needed to off the shelf in order to make these vehicles the best they could for where they were at. So if you were doing a lot of night patrols, or if you were part of a route clearance team, stuff like that, the guys that would actually go down and look for the IEDs and things like that on the roads, they would buy all sorts of lights, spotlights, LED light bars, everything they could think of, and they would bolt it to these things and then let the mechanics figure out how to run all the wires. And they would have a row of switches that they could just light up the night and look for all this stuff. So if you ever see like MRAPs of different kinds and they have light bars and stuff everywhere, that's what they were doing, is they were just trying to make the best of what they could with whatever the Army gave them. Coming back, we have some storage boxes. So on my version of the MRAP, we had big armored panels here, so these storage boxes were basically deleted. We couldn't use them. And if you had those armor panels, you had to worry about running into things with them. So if you took a corner too tight, things like that. And some of the guys that were in 110 with me know that we would always scratch stuff up with them because it makes the vehicle like 1.5 times wider than it really needs to be. You got your rear suspension components, same thing as on a normal cargo truck. You had a tire pressure system, so you could actually control how much air was in your tire from the inside of the cab. Because the last thing you want to do is have to get out and check and see if you have a flat tire. So it monitors your tire pressure. You can actually put it into different modes for whatever you're on, things like that. You also have different little windows up top so you can see out. Those are ballistic, so they can take some bullets or take shrapnel, anything like that, and you can see out so you're not just living in a box. Coming around to the backside, this is your main entrance for anybody that's going to ride in the back, all right, to include the gunner. The driver and the commander have their own door, but everybody else pretty much gets inside this way. One of the things about a Cayman is they had these stairs here. These stairs were the first thing that every new driver would bash into something. So they would always get crushed. Normally, and I've seen plenty of Caymans that either had crushed steps or they had a different color step because you had to get a replacement. Those things were always getting crushed. You can also see the V-shaped hole right here. Here's like a cross section of what it would do. So if something blows up underneath, it gets channeled out to the sides. And hopefully everybody inside just ends up with mild concussions instead of dying. You have your typical trailer hookups here. So if you had to tow a trailer, you could. However, that made it more difficult for the people to get out. And you had to take your stairs and actually fold them up or take them off completely depending on what you were trying to haul behind you. So that made getting in and out just a little bit harder. You also had a ladder here. You could get up on top if you strapped anything down on top or anything like this. Unlike some of the other variants of MRAPs that you might see around, this one does not have any hatches in the roof for people to poke out and shoot out of. It only has that gunner's hatch up front. Typical tail lights, you'll have your backup lights. These are so you can back up at night. They actually provide pretty good illumination. However, the driver has no literal clue what is behind him. So he has to rely on the guys in the back looking out of the windows and telling him if he's clear or not. Because while he has mirrors back there, he really can't tell what's all the way back here, especially if you add on all the bolt-on armor and things like that. So these things have a pretty wide turning radius as well, so at nighttime or in congested Iraqi streets, canal roads, things like that, people would have to help you drive. This was a team effort when you were driving this thing. It's fun, it's really comfortable to drive in and really fast, but you had to have people help you out because the driver has no clue really what he's going on. Luckily though, you're big enough that whatever you run into is probably going to be worse off than you are. So that makes it all right in the end. And then going down the other side, there's basically nothing different than the sunny side, which is significantly warmer than this. So you can look down the side, but the only thing that's different is instead of a gas tank, you have batteries. We looked at all the outside, now we're going to go onto the inside. And like I said before, this is how the crew gets in and out. So we're going to go through the easiest way possible. Here we go. You just go up the stairs. Here we are in the troop compartment. As you can see, the door we just came in. And then you've got some previous unit put nice little glow-in-the-dark things to show you where the back end is, so that way you know the exits, you know, for OSHA, clearly identified fire exits. And you got seats down both sides. You can configure this in several different ways. Typically though, you'd have the 6 seats in the back for people to ride back here. You could also set this up to carry a litter, or actually 4 litters. So if you had casualties, you could put them on the litters, strap them down that way, and this could almost be an ambulance. One of the things I talked about is that this is a mine-resistant vehicle, so if it gets blown up with a mine, there's going to be a blast, and it's going to lift you up. Well, similar to most helicopter seats nowadays, they're meant to take a collapse. So if the helicopter hits hard, the seat just drops down. You don't take that force through your body. Same way happens almost in reverse here. If the vehicle gets blasted up, this seat is actually going to take that force, and you won't get messed up. So these little weird looking kickstands and everything, that all has to do with keeping you as safe as possible from the vehicle itself when you're getting blown up. So when you come in, you just lower your seat down, and you're gonna pull your little leg harness out, or your little leg stand. Then you get in, you sit down, you put your little buckles on, and then you have to ride like this. Now, wearing full kit, like if you're wearing your vest with your plates, your ammunition, you have your weapon, all that stuff is right here. You probably might have a radio strapped to your back. You might even have, you definitely got a water source somewhere on your back or on your person. You've got a lot of stuff. So this is not very comfortable if you're wearing all your stuff. It's honestly not a whole lot comfortable when you're just sitting here in street clothes. But this keeps you safe if the vehicle takes a blast. The whole seat will drop down, and if my legs were down here, I might have the chance of eating one of my kneecaps, or my leg being broken by the force and the overpressure coming up. So this keeps me safe from all of that. Comfort level in here compared to some of the other MRAPs and some other military vehicles is pretty good. However, the little foot pegs, they suck because you're sitting here for possibly hours. If you're doing long convoys, or if you're doing route clearance missions, anything like that could take hours, and you're just sitting back here waiting for something to happen. Your legs are going to go dead, like all of that jazz. The thing is that if you didn't keep your feet on there, they could get blown up. I mean, if the vehicle takes a hit, because you're never really expecting it. And that's one of the things that stressed out a lot of people. It was one of those things you had to worry about, but that you couldn't do anything about. Besides riding in the most protected vehicle that the Army could give you at the time, is you kind of had to wait for stuff to blow up. A lot of the times when you're on the route, you would see like the vehicle commander up front, the gunner especially, because he has some of the best views, and the driver. They would always have to pay attention to what was around them. So they would have to look for disturbed dirt. They would have to look for tripwires. They would have to look for command wires for somebody that's going to try to blow something up. They would have to look for a stack of rocks to be an aiming stake. So if you're driving down the road and you see a stack of rocks, that could be somebody's way of timing how fast it takes you to get from point A to point B. And then next time you come through there, they know how fast you're probably going. They use that same aiming stake, and this time they have a bomb there. So if they hit a little switch, or it could be as simple as a doorbell. You could wire that up to make that blow something up. So a lot of the time you'll hear about guys that come back and you'll always find them riding in the left lane of the road, or you'll find them hugging the center line of a road, things like that. It's just stuff that a lot of the guys early on that had to deal with stuff exploding on a regular basis, is you didn't want to be right next to the guardrail. And a lot of the guys that have been over to Iraq, I could speak to Iraq, and I'm sure Afghanistan was the same, they would actually take bombs and things like that, and they would plaster of Paris it into the shape of a concrete curb. And then they would take out a piece of concrete curb, put that in there, make it look the same, and then they would put some sort of aiming stake somewhere out there so that they knew where it was from across the street. And then they would blow that up as soon as you went by. So they were doing sneaky stuff like that all the time. Or they would see that like your unit constantly drove over trash, right? Well, then they would hide bombs in the trash. Or one of the things in OIF2 that we had to deal with was pedestrian overpasses. So like a place where pedestrians are allowed to walk over the road. And cities these days have that here. But what they would do is they would see that we would go underneath these overpasses. Well, they would stack a bunch of artillery rounds on that thing, and then when you drive under it, they would explode it. So that was another thing you had to worry about. So sometimes guys would, like the standard operating procedure was when you drove over or under one of these things, you would change lanes mid-go. That's why a lot of the times if you'll see like news footage or if you'll hear stories of some of the guys is they would keep all the vehicles, all the civilian vehicles away from us because we would constantly be changing lanes. We would try to drive about as erratic as we could. It was almost like a old late 80s, early 90s NASCAR race whenever we were driving because we were trying to get wherever we wanted to go as fast as we can get there. One, it made it harder to hit us, and two, if we didn't know how we were getting there, they didn't know how we were getting there. So it was a constant back and forth between what capabilities we had. So like these vehicles, early on in the war, we didn't have these. Once the IEDs and stuff started coming in, then the Army said, okay, a tank, a Brad, 113, Humvees, those aren't meant to take a blast like that. Can they? Sometimes, but they weren't designed for it. Now you start having the V-shaped hull, the suspended seats, things like that were designed that if something blows up, you can maybe survive it better. It gave you a better chance. So once we got that, then we had to start developing tactics in order to use that better. So not driving in the same lane all the time, not taking the same route every time. Things like that, because if you got into too comfortable of a thing, they would get comfortable with you and then they would blow you up. So vehicles like this, they were made for us to be able to take the things that the enemy were doing and defend against them as best we could. And that's what this vehicle in particular for me did. I mean, it's big, it's cumbersome, it's loud, it's fun to drive, but it also was designed to protect you. Whether or not if the bomb's big enough, the bomb's big enough. You're going to get got. But it gives you a better chance than being on foot, driving a Humvee, because a Humvee will really get jacked up, and things like that. So that's what this vehicle is designed to do. And if the comfort level wasn't what you wanted because of the stupid little kickstand things that make your legs go numb and make you wish you didn't have all of your ammo on you and all that jazz, it's just something you had to deal with because that's what would happen. It would blow up and it would give you the best chance. This vehicle in particular, it was pretty easy to live out of compared to some of the other ones. Ours had a table that we could play cards in if we had enough time. You know, things like that, crew comfort stuff. You could have Christmas dinner on that table. This had everything you needed, basically. And you could change it out to be able to take casualties or do any sort of the missions that they wanted us to do.
And did this vehicle make you feel safe?
Safer, yeah. I mean, there's certain times and places where you get that spidey sense that you know that something's about to go down. Like if you're in a crowded area or something like that and civilians just start kind of getting out of there, or if it's nighttime and typically you see people driving around or things like that and suddenly all that traffic kind of starts to die off. It seems like everybody around you, the local area, knew something was about to go down before you did. So you kind of got that spidey sense on the back of your neck that's like, something ain't quite right now. Like, what's about to go on? And at those times, the best thing you could do was just keep your eyes out, look and see what you could find, make sure that the gunner is paying attention, things like that. And, I mean, really, for the stuff that we were fighting in OIF2 and on and on and on, we kind of had to wait for it to happen to us. We had intelligence where we were looking for, high-value targets and all that stuff, but for the actual low-level guy that's actually attacking you, not the guy that's paying for it or the guy that's planning it, but the low-level guys, you kind of had to wait for that to happen or hope that you saw what he was about to do before he did. And, yeah, early on in the war, we had a lot of the dumb ones. But as we started killing or capturing the dumb ones, the smart ones had to start coming in and doing the job better, and you saw more and more ingenious things that they were doing in order to get at us. And because, I mean, when you're rolling around the town in giant tan vehicles, you are the target because there's nobody else out there. You've got Brads, you've got tanks, you've got MRAPs like this rolling around. We're an easy target because we're a big target. And we can't be subtle about it. You can't ride around in a Toyota pickup truck and just blend in with everybody and hope to get away with it because, I mean, you don't blend in. Obviously, you don't blend in over there. So you've got guns and ammo and everything on you. And so the vehicle helped because you knew if a mine or an ambush happened around you, this thing was better designed than what your organic units vehicles were. And there were a couple different kinds of these, and each of them had their pros and cons. Like this one's probably the medium length, right? There's another one that is longer, and there's a couple different variants that were a little shorter. Some were taller, some were. They all had their little things because it's different companies making them. So each company's putting their own spin on it, and everybody has their own personal preferences as to which one of the MRAP variants. Because if you hear MRAP, it's a family of vehicles. It might not all be made by the same company, but it's the thought that counts on those. It's what they're meant to do. And yeah, they made you feel safer, but you also knew the limitations of it.
Sure.
The switches back here, and actually there's one for each station here. Those are for an intercom system. So, like I said, the people back here could be looking out of the windows and things like that. Also, as I said, on the outside, the driver can't really see everything that he needs to see in order not to hit stuff with the extra wide, extra tall, extra long vehicle. So you would have a headset on that would actually go up underneath your helmet, and you could get up and you can look out the back and you could say, okay, you've got 3 feet before you break your stairs, or you just broke your stairs. That's basically the two conversations that would go on. But he would let people know like what was going on, tell the driver, tell the commander. The commander could be like, hey, there's a shady guy in a blue man dress over there, keep an eye on him. And you could actually watch him all the way around and be like, yeah, he's not doing anything, or yeah, he's on a cell phone and telling our position to somebody, or he's looking shady. Yeah, I agree. Or, I mean, you could sit around being bored and just talk. You can play the name game or several different other games that soldiers like to play while we're bored, because that's what you do as a soldier. You make up stuff and you play games. But that's what those were for, was for a intercom communication system. Also, you could actually dial in onto the radios for the vehicle and talk out. So if you had your lieutenant back here or a squad leader back here, or if the crew of the vehicle wasn't actually part of the dismounted team, they could be back here plugged in and have good situational awareness of what's going on. They could hear what's going on the radio, things like that. And they could, it's not like just jumping out of a box and being like, okay, why am I out now? And that's a lot of the flaws of what happened on the early Bradleys, is people didn't really know what was happening whenever you got out of the back. Well, with this, they had the radio. Everybody could hear on each one of the stations. Everybody could hear what was going on. So you got out of the back knowing why you were getting out, knowing what you were about to do, things like that. Just help out situational awareness and not being sitting back here in a big box and being bored.
Awesome. All right, so we'll get out of the big box and show you some more of the driver and commander's position up front.
Yeah. Okay, so in between the crew compartment and the crew riding area for the squad, you'd have the actual crew compartment. So you have your gunner, you have your commander, and you have your driver. In between there, you have your radio stack. So you have either power amplifiers, you would have your hard drive for your tracking systems and all that for your digital communications. You'd have satellite communications, if you had that capability, would be here. Anything you needed to talk to the outside world would be here. Underneath here would be where that jamming equipment went that I talked to about the antennas up front and on the back. This would be where your jamming box would go, because normally those are pretty big. And then over on this side, we have probably the most important piece of equipment on the entire vehicle. This is the air conditioner. All right, so a lot of you guys in the Bradley video asked if they had an air conditioner. Well, they didn't, but this one did. And that's one of the reasons that the Caiman was the best vehicle the Army's ever designed. I'm just kidding, I like my bread. But this is your air conditioner, all right? So this whole thing right here kept everybody cool. It'd draw air from the inside, it'd pump it out through all these little things. Now, these little vents didn't really do anything for the guys way in the back, and they didn't do a whole lot for the guys in the front, but it made that little bit of a difference. So if it's 102 outside, it would probably be like 80 something in here, which is a whole lot different when you're sweating and you got all your gear on. So this is probably one of the well-maintained pieces of equipment in the Army, and everybody really started griping if this thing went out, because being in a big armored box in the desert sucks. So air conditioner, first thing you check every day, last thing you check when you're putting them away. Then moving up from there, we've got the gunner's position. The gunner's platform was right here. It's the exact same platform that would be on your Humvee. All right, anybody that was in a Humvee and saw the gunner station there, this would be it. The gunner has a box where he can talk on the intercom, things like that. And then he comes up into here and he has a armored station. He has a whole slew of little bulletproof glass and things like that. I'll actually get out of the way and let y'all see up in there. All right, so the gunner station here, you have your mount up there with the gun shield. Normally you'd either have a 240 Bravo machine gun, a 50 caliber. Some units would have a squad automatic weapon up there. You could mount a Mark 19 grenade launcher up there. However, in big cities and things like that in Iraq, those weren't used as much because of the whole collateral damage thing. You can't really win hearts and minds if you're blowing up buildings and schools. So those wouldn't actually be used that much. Like, we had them in our inventory. However, we didn't really use them that much because if you're just throwing grenades everywhere, it makes more people mad at you than they like you. Nobody really likes anybody rolling through your neighborhood launching grenades everywhere. Just, switch the roles, put yourself in their shoes, you'll probably get upset. But this would actually be a powered turret. So you had that weapon system, which would be shoulder fired normally, unless you have a 50 cal and you've got your little butterflies up there. Everybody knows what a 50 cal is. But this would normally be a powered station. So there would be a drive here with a hand station right up on top, and you had a little joystick, and you just slung it left to right, and the turret would traverse left to right. You could also kick it into manual and just actually grab onto the whole thing and spin it around. Your firing arc to the rear was pretty much straight out behind you. You kind of had to hope that the guy behind you had you covered because there's a lot of vehicle behind this. As I said earlier, you could shoot your own antennas off, which you had to be mindful of. So if you're shooting at 10 or 2, watch out for your own antennas. Going down from there, you actually had a power system here where you could monitor your batteries, and you could actually plug in to the drive system, and those cables would go right up to there, and they would actually be long enough to go and do whatever you needed to do. There was also a seat that would hook in right to here. It was just a strap. The strap would go from here. Oh, hey, there's the manual. You could actually hook in a crank to this and manually crank it around if you didn't have the electrical capability or if it broke. But you have your little strap hanger here. It would come across. There would normally be like a little hook right here, and you would put a strap in there, and you would just sit on that, and it would make your legs go numb. So a lot of the time the gunners would just stand up. Another thing that they would do is up top they would run chicken wire or HESCO wire, depending on what you know about Army stuff. But HESCO is just a thick chicken wire, and they would put it up on top in an arch, and then on top of that they would put camouflage netting in order to keep the sun off of you, because the sun never stops. It never ever stops in the desert burning you. So even in the wintertime, you could get a sunburn up there because that sun is hot. So it would be, you'd have all your stuff up there. You'd have your water source, you'd have extra ammunition. Everything you needed was up in this turret with you. So if you were the gunner, this was your workspace. Everywhere else, everybody had their own little things, but that was your world up top. And you were the primary guy looking out for trouble. Here we are on the driver's station. Probably one of the most fun stations, as I said in the Bradley video. But I like driving stuff. So this thing was fun to drive. Even though I wasn't assigned as a driver, I still drove a lot. All right, I would always find somebody that was hanging around and I would drive them if I had the chance. So you got your standard controls that you'd find on a LMTV, MMTV, for those of you that know anything about military cargo trucks. It's just basically the newer version of the old school deuce and a halves and 5 tons. So this dash is going to look a lot alike because this was made by Stuart Stevenson, which makes those vehicles. Imagine that. You have your standard way of turning on the lights, which in the Army we call that service drive. You'd hit the button, you hit enter, all that. All your light stuff's right here. Here we have auxiliary switches for the different lights that I talked about on the outside, where they just kind of add whatever they got. Up top, this one has actually one of the remote control spotlights. That's what this is for. So you flip it on, flip it off, and you can actually move it around with this. So if you see something, you don't like the way it looks, it's nighttime out, you can actually put your spotlight right on it and everybody kind of give an eyeball to it. The TC actually has its own separate one over here, which is kind of nice. Normally you'd only get one, but this one, as I said, units would just put what they had where they could put it. Here's the box for that tire pressure monitoring system. You can actually put it, you see sand, cross country, and highway. There's also an emergency mode and a run flat mode. So if your tires are going flat, you put it in run flat, it maintains that minimum amount of tire pressure in order for you to limp home to where you needed to go. If you notice, typical Army vehicle, there is no spot to put your keys, right? Your ignition button's right there. It's the one with the little swirly cue on it. You got different light switches for hazard lights, whoopee lights if you have them. Everything's up here. Your gear selector is here. It's an automatic gear shifter. And you basically have neutral, drive, reverse. They really dumb down the driving experience here, but it's fine because you got more important things to worry about. You got a big steering wheel because you got big wheels. All right, if you need to turn big wheels, you need a big steering wheel. That's what we got right here. It does have tilt. No low balls. I know what I got. It's got tilt. You got your left turn, right turn. All right, all this stuff is just things that would be on a normal car. It wasn't hard teaching people how to drive these things. It was just bigger and they had to get their head around that. Brake pedal, gas pedal, standard stuff. This has an air brake system, so you got your air brake and your trailer supply. So if you're going to trailer something, that's how you put on your trailer air. Climate control system, that runs the most important switch on the vehicle right there is your AC. You got your fan speed, temperature, whether or not, I mean, this is off of a car. You guys know what this is. You got your air vents, which if you feel those or not is up to however you run stuff. Sometimes you'll see guys that run like a tube down and they'll put it either right here where it's blowing up to them, or they'll hang it here, wherever. Like you can get a bunch of this extra stuff. You could run those wherever you need to. And anybody that's been in, you'll know. Right here, this is your inclometer or your can't meter, all right, or the oh shit meter, all right. If it gets in the red, things are probably not looking great, all right. This vehicle will roll over. Have I had it up in the red before? Yes. Is it scary? Yes. Is everybody on the inside wondering what they're about to do? Yes. But that little ball will tell you how much you're about to, you're pitching over. So if that goes up in the red, start thinking about picking a different line. Here we have a control for a, it looks like an IR spotlight. Could be aftermarket. I don't remember having one of these, but I could have been wrong. Some of these had a driver's vision enhanced system, which is basically a newfangled driver's night sight. It was a screen right here that would fold down, and it had a sensor on the outside in the middle, and you could use one of, it was almost like a box like this, where you could actually kind of get it to look where you wanted to and dial it in. And that would give you a thermal image of what you're driving at for nighttime conditions, so that you didn't have to have your white lights on all the time if you want to be a little extra sneaky and nobody could find you. Then we have our communications box here, which it's the same as all the other ones that's been around. You got a driver's side, and the commanders would both use the same one. You just plug in, and that way you'd be able to talk. Even though I'm this close to the commanders, sometimes if things are blowing up or the gunner's rocking with the 50 cal, things like that, I still need to have a headset on to hear them because otherwise you can't hear anything. Whatever unit had this vehicle last loved this glow tape. All right, so if you don't know where you're at in the vehicle, there's something with glow tape on here that will tell you. I mean, the whole top of the door, if you don't, it's there. So this is your way out. Also, if you notice, this handle comes off. All right, so probably why it has so much glow tape is if the guy takes this off and throws it back there somewhere, he might not know where it is. So you got glow tape on here because these are pretty important. You can also take this with you. Some of our drivers would actually carry theirs with them because this is how you unlock the vehicle on the outside. It's the same size. So you just come up and you would unlock it. That's how you get in. You can also throw a padlock on, so not just any one of these would work. But if you combat locked your vehicle, you want one of your crew to probably have one of these in his back pocket, just so he can get in and out. And this is also how you get in and out from inside here. You could combat lock it so that nobody on the outside can open up the doors and shoot you or throw in a bomb or something like that. Or you come back and you pull it and you just open up the door. And these doors are not light. They're big doors. Like I said, on our version, we had extra armor on them, so they were actually a little too big to grab onto and manhandle like that. So that's why you had an actual switch on the dash where you would hold the switch down and your door would open for you, which was nice, but it took a long time. So if the vehicle is in any sort of distress, or if you've rolled it, or if you're laying on your side, or if tipped up against a canal, something like that, this is probably not your primary way out. You're probably either going up through the roof or out through the back, which luckily there's glow tape to show you where to go. Also, these seats do the little flop down feature that the ones in the back do. However, your feet are kind of, you don't have a little space to put them like you do in the back, but these actually will take a little bit of a blast. Okay, one other thing on the dash here. Anybody that's ever driven a air brake equipped vehicle knows that there's an alarm. When you have low air, right here, your little air brake thing, when that goes down into the red, there's an alarm that sounds like the most annoying sound ever from Dumb and Dumber. You know how they're all screeching at the top of their lungs. That's right underneath this thing. And anybody that's ever been into a military vehicle and has seen the little alarm thing, I bet you it's taped up like this, because I swear it seems like it is just drilling into your brain. And that's why this little spot here is taped up. But if I pull it back, you'll see there's the little alarm right there. And nobody likes that. It is awful. Also, like tactically speaking, if your vehicle is sitting there and you have your parking brake on, or if you don't have your parking brake but you're getting ready to go, you have your foot on the brake but the engine's off because you're ready to get started at a moment's notice, you could run out of air and you're trying to be as quiet as possible, your alarm starts blaring in the middle of the night, you can hear that thing for days. So anything you could do to make that a little bit quieter, because this is a statement, all right? We know that we're low of air. There's a gauge there that says we're low of air. This thing could just be like a little warning that says, hey, you're low air. No, this screams it into your soul. So that right there is why that piece is taped up. And anybody that's ever driven around is gonna know why that was taped up. But there it is. It happens in every vehicle with air. This is one of the more boring seats if you don't have anything going on. So you can't really drive anything, you're not shooting anything, and you're not playing cards or smoking and joking in the back with the guys. So up here, you're in charge of the vehicle. All right, here you would have a computer screen that's tracking where you are. You could send digital messages, things like that. You can do basically anything you need to do business-wise on planning the operation, tracking where you are, things like that. Here you would have your GPS. It would be locked into here, and that would feed this, tell you where you're at, all that jazz. Antenna power, that's just one of the things you had to turn on for the radio system. Other than that, you have a door, you have the window up front, and you have a sun visor. You'd have your headset on so you could talk to everybody in the outside world, and that's about it. You do have your own door that you can get in or out of. And yeah, you're in charge of the whole vehicle. So you have the least amount of stuff to play with while you're on mission, but you're overall in charge of everything. So the responsibility, I guess, is what you have to do. which is always fun.
Did you ever command one of these?
Yes. So I've been in every position on one of these. I've gunned in them before, which that's fun and all, but you're pretty much just waiting for stuff to happen. Commanding it's fun, but it's also nerve-wracking because you're giving up that control for a guy that's driving, and you you start looking at your little inclometer over there, and things are getting a little sketchy, and you're like, well, I hope we don't roll this thing. And then you start wargaming that out in your head. But when you're actually on a mission, doing a mission, things like that, then it kind of gets kind of fun because you're out there, you're looking around, you're watching people, you're making sure you're not, running over anything, things like that. So the responsibility is fun. Teaching your guys stuff is fun. Commanding the vehicle, being what's called the actual. All right. So if you're on the radio, and let's say I'm Red 2, right? That was my call sign. So Red 2, that's me. My driver, Red 2 Delta. So when you hear somebody say that you're the actual, that means that you are the person that they think you're talking to. If I'm off of the vehicle and let's say my gunner's on the radio for me, somebody calls Red 2, he's going to answer if I don't have a radio on me. So he's Red 2 Golf. So he would be the gunner. So if you're the actual, if you're up here and this vehicle becomes you, and sometimes you would think about it oh, that's 3 over there. There's Red 4 over there. There's Red 1 over there. So you look at those vehicles, you learn the little parts of them that are different than your truck, and you're like, okay, there's 2, there's 1, and that's how you kind of battle track where everybody is. But also you start thinking about that vehicle like that person. So you're like, oh, there's 1. Well, where's he going? Now he's lost again. That's great. Okay, 1's driving off doing his own thing. So when you're the actual, this vehicle is you. That's just how it becomes. You start thinking about it that way. And at least in my case, I start thinking of the vehicle as the person. So if your driver sucks, you've got to teach him better so that they don't think you suck as a TC of the vehicle. You got to sit there and be like, well, you just made us look like hell because you ran over a school bus full of kids or something like that. It's something crazy. So that's what this seat has. It's got all the responsibility and none of the fun. Bye.